Hi, this is Magnus Drones. I'm Jim. Today I want to go through the process of getting authorization to fly in controlled airspace. I know new pilots that maybe have studied the process in getting their Part 107 or know about it, whether you're recreational or otherwise, but have never actually gone through getting that authorization to fly. So I'm going to go through that. And there'll be some things that I won't cover in the video that I would normally do just for time's sake. They're basically other resources, checking some other information, whether if there's any temporary flight restrictions, just stuff like that that you want to know about as a safe pilot. So we'll walk through it. I'll show you a couple of things that I do and just kind of that basic process, and we'll actually get authorization to go fly. So let's get started. One of the resources that I'm going to use is a sectional chart. If I've flown in a particular area and I'm familiar with the airspace already, I'm not likely going to pull this up every time, but when I want to research maybe flying some new space, I'm likely going to go and find the sectional chart. You can go on the FAA.gov's website. You can actually type in a search, sectional charts, and you'll get a whole list of which ones you pull up. You can save them, which I've done here, and they're yours to use as you need. They'll update them from time to time, so it's always good to go back into the FAA's website and just double check to look for any new updates. I've pulled up the sectional chart for the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and you can see it's pretty busy. What I'm going to do today is there's a small reservoir that I've flown. It's in one of my videos, Marine Creek Reservoir, and it happens to be, and I'll zoom in on it, but it happens to be right here. It's very small, but it borders Fort Worth Meacham Field and Fort Worth Alliance, which is Carswell Air Force Base. So let's zoom in and get a little closer look. So we can see right here, here's Meacham, here's Carswell, and here's the reservoir. It's very small on the map. What I know from looking at the sectional chart is that airspace, this is Class D airspace by the dotted blue lines, and this isn't a lesson on how to read sectional charts. I'm just pointing it out that the dotted blue line designates Class D airspace. Meacham Field starts at the surface and goes up to 3,200 feet. Alliance starts at the surface and goes up to 3,000 feet. So I know that at the ground, I'm in Class D airspace. So what are my altitude limits? You might say, well, 400 feet. Not necessarily. And that's one of the other resources that you need to check. And your app, which I'll talk about here in a moment, will help you with that as well. But the FAA also has what they call UAS facility maps. And again, I don't check this every time. As I say, same drill. If I've flown the space a lot, I'm already familiar with it. But they have right here a tab called Maps are available on our map page. This has to do with the facility maps. When you click it, you're going to get the United States. Now, I'll try to do this quickly. The facility map is another FAA resource, and you can see these green and red shapes, and there's a lot of squares in them. What's kind of nice is the squares are, the squares have numbers in them. And I'll zoom in where you can see that. here's Marine Creek Reservoir. And in this square and the neighboring squares around it, there's a number 200. If I were to look around, I'd get out to areas where it's 0. Other areas, there's 400, there's 300. So around the reservoir, it's 200. That's my altitude limit. I can't fly above 200 feet in this controlled airspace. Again, there's another resource that's good to have, good to know where to find it, particularly if you're going to go out and look at to flying in space that you're not normally familiar with. On the FAA website, faa.gov, they have an app called Before You Fly. It's actually those letters, B4UFLY, and it's a free download. And that's the app that I'll use to get authorization. There's the other one that complements it called Air Control. It was previously or recently called Aloft, but they've just changed it in the last few days. It's called Air Control. You can see the symbols for Before You Fly and Air Control that are the main apps that are involved in getting authorization to fly. So I'll open up Before You Fly, and I already put the cursor, if you will, on the reservoir, Marine Creek Reservoir, and I would put the where I plan to launch from. But you can see right away, if I zoom out, here's my shaded blue circles and shapes that are the controlled airspace. And I can also see on the app here, controlled airspace, authorization required. So the next steps are, and it says here, permissible altitude for authorization, 200 feet. Now I just showed you the FAA's facility maps, but you also get that information here. So you know how high you're limited to. In my flight, I'm going to go into my settings. I have a DJI Air 2S, and I'm going to set my max altitude and my return home altitudes to a little below. I might set them to 190 or 195 so that I won't accidentally exceed that. I want to get LANC approval. I'll tap that. When I tap the Get LANC Approval tab, it'll take me to the Air Control app. And this is where I'll actually submit the request for authorization. One thing I notice here is Carswell, there's a good chance that I'm not going to get authorization because it's red. It's probably restricted airspace. I'm not sure. Just to be safe, I'm not going to fly in that part of the reservoir. You can see here I'll stay in the blue when I get through the process. So, but that's just for conversation purposes. Next step, I'm going to tap Fly. So in this part of it, I'm going to simulate like I'm at the site where I'm going to fly. Now I'm here at home, obviously, and I'm going to go through the process. I should get authorization to go fly. But out on the field, you can do this right on the spot. So I'm hooked up, and I've opened up the Before You Fly. I've tapped the Get LANC. It's sent me over to the Air Control app, and this is the screen I have now. I put my cursor where I plan to launch from, and you can see I've got latitude, longitude, coordinates, some other information. It says facility map, permissible altitude for the authorization is 200 feet. We talked about that. It gives me some other information. It tells me what's nearby. There's Meacham Field, Class D. Here's Meacham International, some other bits and pieces. Of course, I get over here to Carswell, NAS Joint Reserve Base, Fort Worth. So I'm going to tap Lance, and it'll take me to this screen, and you can see it wants to know, is this a commercial or recreational flight? I'll tap commercial, and here's where it tells me my altitude limit. I'm at 200 feet, and if you go above that, next is not going to be highlighted for you to move on. Well, what I'm going to do here is now I'm going to identify the boundaries of which I'm going to fly in. I simply grab these corners and I'm going to drag them, hold my finger on them, and then pull it out here pretty much to cover the boundary of the lake, or if you're somewhere else, wherever you're located, they want to know where you're going to be. Once I've done that, I hit next. Wants to know how long today. I'm going to hit 2 hours. You make your adjustments here, whatever you're going to fly, and what time you're going to start. It happens to be 11:05 right now. I'm going to leave that alone, but I'll put a different day and time if I'm setting this up for tomorrow at a particular time. Click next. It's loading. Now here it says pre-authorization failed. Edit flight. I think it's right here. If I go down to 150 feet, 2 hours, okay, expand my details. The other thing I think is it doesn't like the fact that I'm trying to fly, that I've identified some area that is part of Carswell. So let me go back and I'll narrow and basically say I'm going to stay out of that space. I might kick that up to 200 just to see. Okay, so it didn't like the fact that I was wanting to fly in some of Carswell Joint Base Reserve, military airspace. So eligible for auto approval, tells me day and time, gives me that information that I've entered. I'll hit next, review and submit. Scroll down, I like, agree and submit. It's loading. I now have authorization to go make that flight. What happened in my email, and that's part of the setting up, put your email in there. This is my written authorization to fly that airspace. And as you scroll down, you can kind of look at the bits and pieces, but it is all the obligations and information in case you're out there flying and you need to show somebody that, yeah, I have authorization. This is what you'd pull up and want to show them. So that's it. You go fly, you fly within those boundaries, and it becomes another great experience and enjoyment of flying our drones. So that's the basic steps for getting authorization to fly in controlled airspace. You can see I had to make a couple corrections because it didn't give me authorization the first time, but I had a little troubleshoot. I could see that Carswell Joint Base Reserve space was the problem. So I hope that helped. I hope that'll be encouraging for those that have never tried this to go through the process. If you make some mistakes or you're not sure, you back out and make corrections and keep going. I hope you got something out of it. If you did, I hope you'll give me a thumbs up, and I'd like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you'll be kept up to date on new videos as I post them.